protecting children from abuse, fighting against human trafficking, and celebrating Puerto Rican heritage are the topics for this week's Latino Motion. Please join us.
Choose quality, value, distinction. Choose Stockton.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University. Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas. Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. Each year, over 3 million children are abused and neglected in America. The late Senator Wynona was one of the pioneers in helping to advocate for children facing abuse and neglect. Joining me today is the CEO and Executive Director of the Senator Wynona Child Advocacy Center, Evelyn Mejia. Welcome to Latino Motion.
Thank you for having me.
Now, 3 million children, that's a staggering number. And yet it says reported. Is that the real number, though?
No, the real estimated number would be 6 million.
Wow.
We estimate 6 million only because most of the households that report abuse don't necessarily just have one victim. We're talking about victims with siblings, so it could be just one sibling, it could be multiple siblings. So that's just an estimated number. We're thinking 6 million, but we're not also calculating the non-reported cases. We have far more non-reported cases than we can possibly imagine.
Now, I understand you are also the president of the New Jersey Children's Alliance, in addition to the CEO of Wynona's House. It's a child advocacy center. What does that mean?
Senator Wynona Child Advocacy Center is one of 800 or approximately 800 child advocacy centers throughout the nation. So our umbrella organization is the National Children's Alliance. The New Jersey Children's Alliance is the New Jersey chapter, the state chapter of the New Jersey Children's Alliance. And basically what we do is that we want to make sure that child advocacy centers throughout the states are following best practices and making sure that we're complying with the standards, or at least the national standards, so that we're servicing the children that we need to in the manner that we should.
Now, I know your agency stands above and beyond all the others in terms of that it's a comprehensive service. Tell me a little bit about that and what's the difference in some of the other advocacy centers.
It's very interesting that you say that, and I wish I could feel very proud about that. But actually, you know, we are the only fully co-located and most comprehensive child advocacy center in the state, but we shouldn't be. We should only be just one of the many, right? Every county should have a child advocacy center that is fully co-located and that has absolutely full resources and access in terms of like a collaboration that we have. But what it means is that we have a building that houses Essex County Prosecutor's Office. We service Essex County. So we have the entire Special Victims Unit in Essex County in our building. We also have Children's Protective Services, DCPMP, formerly known as DIFIS. We have them on board as well. We also have the mental health and the medical team. We actually have a medical suite in our building. So we do the forensic medical exams under the umbrella of Northwest Israel as one of our partners.
Do you foresee any changes coming to bear here in the rest of the state?
I do. I see changes. I know that we've had leaders that have come kind of sort of to the forefront of this fight. I know Senator Sweeney has been, very vocal and very public about making sure that he is advocating for legislation to pass so that CACs become legislatively mandated in the state of New Jersey. I chair the Advocacy and Policy Committee for the state, and that is our number one priority. We want to make sure that children in every single county of New Jersey have access to a child advocacy center, access to a child-friendly environment where they can go and tell their story and not necessarily be re-victimized by the system. because that's what traditionally has happened in the past.
Now, you mentioned the numbers and the fact that this is so widespread. Is there a difference between the communities? I mean, is there more abuse and neglect within Latino community per se, or African American community, or it's just the fact that there's more of a taboo in those communities?
I always say the numbers say one thing, right, and they show one thing. The reality can be something totally different. I know the numbers show that over 70%, close to 80% of the reported cases are African American and Latinos. So of course it's more prevalent. It's something that is reported highly. Again, I go back to always stating that child abuse is something that does not discriminate.
There are some social economic factors at play as well.
There's always socioeconomic factors, right? In most of our social illnesses, right, we have to go back to that and understand how that is impressing on our society and how that's manifesting. And child abuse is one of those things. You know, the stresses that we're feeling as a society is manifested in the child abuse that we're also seeing in the numbers. But it's not just one of them.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but let's talk a little bit about what are the signs for, because there's abuse and neglect that take place, and as a teacher or as a professional or just as a concerned neighbor, what are the signs that you look for in terms of abuse and neglect?
Well, there are different signs. I mean, just like there's different abuse, right? You're talking about neglect. It can be nutritional. It can be emotional neglect. There's different types of neglect. There's different types of abuse. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse. And so the signs can be very, very different depending on the abuse. But generally, what you would see is a change in behavior in the child. Okay, so you're talking about maybe a child that will manifest some symptoms in their behavior as like what we call behavioral children, right? They're not behaving well, etc. They might just be expressing their anger, their pain, their hurt in a way that they're not able to verbalize it, right? So they're acting out. There's other children that get depressed. Now, of course, this is all age appropriate. A small child is not going to sit down and cry and be depressed the way a 14, 15-year-old would be. So it's really a matter of us educating ourselves, but really paying attention.
Do you also think that society overall has changed somewhat to be able to come forward with some of the abuse and neglect that it seems like in the past maybe this was hidden under the rug, so to speak, and maybe people weren't coming forward? Or do you still see the people aren't coming forward as much as they should?
I don't think that people are coming forward as much as they should. And I think a lot of it has to do with leadership. I think it has a lot to do with people that have, and leadership that has a platform, that refuse to talk about the issues, refuse to acknowledge that we have an epidemic in our nation, refuse to say that this is really happening. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that our children are being victimized. They're being victimized in our backyard. And so when you have leadership that is failing to bring the issue to the forefront, you will also have families that will fail to bring the issue to the forefront and seek help because they're going to feel intimidated for various reasons.
Just so that we could put this in a little bit of perspective, the National Children's Alliance indicates that 10% of children are abused. So that's a staggering number, 10%.
10%.
I think the average person thinks that child sexual abuse is very rare, and sadly it isn't. We know that 10% of children in their childhood are going to experience some form of sexual abuse or sexual assault. So it's so critically important that we're aware of that and are ready to step in and help them heal.
1 out of 10 children are abused.
1 out of 10, you're talking about, some of the statistics will show that 1 in 4 girls will be sexually abused, 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused. That's a huge number. What we fail to realize is these children end up being adults, right? So if you stand in a room with 10 people around you, there's going to be someone in that room that was a victim of sexual abuse or physical abuse or neglect.
Let's talk about for individuals that are facing abuse, whether someone watching this program or someone that knows of someone that's facing neglect and abuse. There is a toll-free number.
There is.
Tell me a little bit about that and what kind of services can they expect?
Well, the Department of Children and Families has their toll-free number. It's 877-NJ-ABUSE. And if you suspect abuse, if you know that there's abuse, you can call. It can be an anonymous call. You don't necessarily have to give your name. You just have to make sure that you're paying attention to signs. And if you know that there's abuse, you make that call. That you can be the difference. You and I, we can be the difference in a child's life.
Why is it important to get the help? Why is it important to call that toll-free number?
Number one, you could be the difference between a life and death, right, for that child. Number two, the research shows that children with untreated trauma will more than likely develop mental health issues, more than likely have issues with the criminal justice system. I mean, we have a big push right now in our nation trying to reform the criminal justice system. But if we look at the research, most of the people that are incarcerated have a history of child abuse and neglect, right? So we cannot look at one issue without looking at the core issue. We can't look at our healthcare system without looking at the issues that are putting our children at risk. We can't look at the education system without looking at the ideas and what's happening with what's the dynamic of our children. What are they coming into the classroom with? What is that trauma that they're coming into the classroom with that we are not treating? And so that's why, because of the long-term effects of abuse.
A big part of the problem is getting the support within the family once abuse is reported. In the programs that you run and also through the New Jersey Children's Alliance, is there support for the families as well?
Absolutely. You know, in our center, we have a family advocate program. And basically what that means is that we try to support the entire family in various ways. It could be connecting them to social services. It can be with resources. Some of the cases, and this is also difficult to talk about, but over 90% of the cases of the perpetrators are known to the victims. And some of them are the partner of the parent, of that mother. And so what ends up happening is that that mother no longer has that support system, financially or otherwise. And now she's alone with those children. And so we want to make sure that we're providing. So we do a lot of we collect donations, whether it be clothing and food, etc. We try to make sure that we're connecting our families to resources, social resources in the community, making sure that we are creating or building their support system.
And just one more question on the subject. If you're an undocumented, for example, are you able to call that 800 number? Will
Absolutely.
You still get the help? Will you still get the support?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say do not be intimidated by the system. If you're an undocumented family and you know that that child is being victimized, that is what we're going to target. We're going to focus on the victimization of that child and make sure that that child is safe.
And again, we do have the New Jersey abuse hotline that you mentioned. It's a 877 number, New Jersey abuse, so anyone that's interested in calling that number. There's also out of New Jersey a number, which is 800-422-4453. So those are important numbers to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing this information with our audience. We're going to have you right back for another segment. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. Human trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry where perpetrators profit from the control and exploitation of others. In 2014, an estimated 1 out of 6 endangered runaways reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were likely victims of sex trafficking. Joining me is Evelyn Mejia with the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and she's also the chair of the Foreign Policy and Practices and Human Trafficking Committee. Evelyn, welcome back to Latino Motion.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about this issue that you have been involved with for many years. Actually, you were just on a kind of a foreign trip talking about this issue. Tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing and educating others about human trafficking.
Human trafficking it's been a very interesting journey for me. I've been involved with human trafficking and working with victims of human trafficking for over 10 years. Before people got comfortable with the idea that human trafficking is also something that is happening in the United States. I think for a long time, even in those that had very little knowledge of it, understood human trafficking as something that was happening in third world countries, but not necessarily something that was happening in the US. And it may look different, but we have over 300 and sometimes over 400,000 kids at risk in the United States of being trafficked every single year.
Now, your role with the Coalition Against Human Trafficking, Tell me a little bit about that role. And I know there's a lot of work that's taking place, educating the community that human trafficking does exist. Tell me a little bit about the work that this organization is doing.
The work that the organization does is amazing. This is a very new role for me. Even though I've been working with human trafficking for a very long time, again, this didn't really get the attention, especially here in New Jersey, in the state of New Jersey, until very recently. I think that everyone knows that once the Super Bowl came around, people started talking about human trafficking, and all of a sudden there were resources so that people can organize. But the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking has been around for quite some time, and they were instrumental in organizing, individuals and organizations in this effort. My work started actually in Nigeria. Started in Nigeria a very long time ago. I started working in Nigeria, then I worked in South Africa, Colombia, and I was working around in various countries before I even started working in the US. Only because the issue wasn't something that was being highlighted. There was no support or resources to be able to organize and to be able to provide resources. Polaris was one of the very few nonprofit organizations on a national level that was spearheading all the efforts. And so
let's talk about that work that you started some 10 years ago. Recently, the organization Women Without Borders received a Peace Prize. I understand you had a hand in helping that organization win that prize.
That organization, a little over 10 years ago, the founder of this organization, gave me a call and asked me to come and help her organize and develop programs that would help victimized children and women. She had a burning desire. Her name is Esther Ibanga, and she's a huge leader in Nigeria, someone who's very well respected, clearly, and her work is very well respected. And it was such an honor to go and develop and start that program. It was a program that was, again, designed to work with children and women that were being victimized, especially those that are being victimized through human trafficking. Over 10 years later, we saw this battle of Bring Back Our Girls, right? And it hit the media, especially our social media, and that's when it started to get attention. But this is something that's been happening for many, many years.
Now that it has a public focus or attention, perhaps not as much attention as it should have, there are more people becoming aware of it. In fact, many people being trained to look for signs of human trafficking. Tell me a little bit about that training and what are the signs that we should be looking for?
Well, for one, definitely it's getting more awareness. We're definitely moving forward in legislation. I think that, last year was one of the most kind of sort of forward-thinking piece of legislation ever passed in the state of New Jersey that was allowing for services and allocating funding to servicing victims of human trafficking. We still have a lot to do. Number one, we still need to raise more awareness. We still need to educate and train, but that is happening. It's happening, in terms of being able to educate people on how to get, how to read the signs. What do you do? Human trafficking is very difficult to identify.
There are many people, perhaps meter readers, utility workers that come to the homes and I understand they're being taught about signs to look up. They see a bunch of mattresses laying down, other things like that. It could be a sign of human trafficking. Tell me a little bit about that.
It could be. But, let's just go back to the basics. It's learning what human trafficking is. So for a very long time, we would see underage children working as sex slaves, and we would call them child prostitutes. Or worse, we would treat them as criminals. We would be arresting these young girls, right? Arresting the 14-year-olds and the 15-year-olds and criminalizing them for their offenses. Well, now we're starting to educate the public that, there is no child, no 15-year-old, no 16-year-old that is necessarily a child prostitute. This is a child that's being sexually exploited and is a victim. And so it's almost like, changing the mindset of society, of training them how to identify victims and training them as to what is human trafficking, what does it look like, especially here in the U.S.
Well, it's certainly a lot more involved than we simply think.
Absolutely.
Let's just put up the 800 number. There is an 800 number, 888-373-7888, to report any human trafficking.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on Latino Motion. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. For almost 60 years, the San Juan Bautista Parade has been the iconic celebration of Puerto Ricans in southern New Jersey, helping to keep alive the rich traditions of Puerto Ricans living here. Joining me is the president of the San Juan Bautista Parade, Juan Gonzalez. Juan, welcome to Latino Motion.
And thank you.
I know 60 years, and I know you don't look like you're 60, but I know it's been part of your family tradition.
Yes.
For all those 60 years.
It
Tell me
has
a little
been.
bit about that.
Okay, and it has been. Again, thank you very much for the invitation, and I want to thank you for your efforts in promoting our Latino cultures throughout all of South Jersey, so thank you very much. Yes, the San Juan Bautista Parade is the Puerto Rican parade in Camden, New Jersey. It started in 1957. So very soon we'll be reaching our 60-year mark. And as you mentioned, personally, my mother, la señora Ramona Gonzalez, was one of the founders, one of the original founders way back in 1957. Wow. Although I'm not quite that old, getting there, quite that old, but I often say that I've been involved with the parade probably since I was in the womb, because my mother was always active in the committee.
Well, tell me a little bit about the celebration. Obviously, let me just give the date out right away. It's taking place Sunday, June the 21st.
Yes.
And it's always in that June timeframe every year that takes place, and you take over the city of Camden. Tell me a little bit about what it entails.
Okay, and the parade is, again, Sunday, June 21st. This year is on Father's Day, which is a little different.
That's right.
So bring the fathers, bring the grandfathers, great-grandfathers, bring the whole family. And the parade, and it's a festival immediately after the parade, it's always a very family-friendly, oriented activity. The parade it kicks off at 12 noon over near the toll plaza of the Ben Franklin Bridge that crosses from Camden into Philadelphia. Then it comes across 3rd Street under the bridge through Rutgers University campus and through the downtown Camden area. And then it comes up to Mickle Boulevard, also known as Martin Luther King Boulevard. And from there, it heads up into the Wiggins Waterfront Park, right there at the Camden Waterfront, right across from downtown Philadelphia. It's a beautiful view.
Now, you mentioned 1957. Obviously, that was a time when there was a lot of Puerto Ricans coming into Camden from the island of Puerto Rico. They were trying to find some activities to maintain their culture, heritage alive. Many Puerto Ricans that are growing up here in the Camden in southern New Jersey continue to support those efforts. Why is it important to maintain that culture heritage?
It's very important. With the parade and the parade-related activities, we have a whole list of activities throughout the year, but primarily with the parade and the festival, it's a way of maintaining that culture. I always say that it's kind of two-pronged. In one sense, we are honoring our parents, like my mother, and our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents at this point in time, that came from Puerto Rico here to South Jersey in the Camden area in particular, and to honor them who came, so long ago, many generations and decades ago. But at the same time, we are also passing on that tradition, that cultural heritage to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So we are kind of the link from the past into the future. And it's very important to maintain that connection, that culture, to teach about the music, the heritage, the music, the dance, the food, the family structure. All of that is very important.
You mentioned Puerto Rican heritage, Puerto Rican culture, and as we've seen the dynamics change when we have Latinos from throughout Latin America, from Dominican Republic, from Mexico, Cuba, Colombia, and et cetera. And you've embraced, over the years, all of these nationalities in the parade as well.
Absolutely, yes. So on one hand, it is the Puerto Rican Parade of Camden, New Jersey. But as you see, our motto is celebrating our culture with our Latino brothers and sisters, and it goes beyond that. It's become the parade in Camden, the San Juan Bautista Parade, has become a citywide festival where people from all over the city come and join us, not only Latinos, not only Puerto Ricans. So it is the Puerto Rican Parade, but we embrace and invite everyone. to come and celebrate with us.
Now, you mentioned some of the other activities you do throughout the year, and you just recently had the pageant
Yes.
take place. It was a nice event. Tell me a little bit about the pageant and who the winners were.
Sure. Yeah. This past May 2015, we had our pageant where we selected the queens, and actually this year we did a little bit different. We have our teenage queen, which is Carla Marie Calzado. Our teenage queen, and this year we also had the Reinado Infantil, where we had the little girls, ages 5 to 7. They also competed, so that was very nice. We had the teenagers and the little girls as well, and they all looked beautiful, and then they came out with their gowns, and it's a very nice, classy event. It's not just like a beauty pageant, it's deeper than that. And again, we have our Carla Marie Calzado, our queen, and we also have a queen, the Infantil, the little girls, and we expect to see them on our float.
That's
Coming
great.
up, June 21.
Tell me, before the float, before the parade, and the night before, you also have a gala.
And we have the
Tell
gala.
me, you're going to be pretty tired.
I know, I'm not going to sleep.
Tell me about the gala.
That's fine. Yes, that Saturday, June 20th, at Arletto's Caterers in Deptford, New Jersey. Starting at 5:30 is the cocktail hour until midnight. We have a very nice, classy event with the gentlemen with the tuxedos, the ladies with their gowns, and it's a very nice, classy event, kind of the high society, if you will, of Latinos in South Jersey.
Let me just mention real quickly, there's a number you could call for more information. It's
Yes.
757 9600, and you could actually call you directly.
And yes, on my email as well, yes. But the office, as you mentioned, Bird, is 856-757-9600. My email is very simple. It's juangoesq@hotmail.com. And we also have a website, www.sjbp.org.
Also want to mention that the violent Puerto Rican parade is taking place the last Sunday in July, which I believe falls July the 26th. So also like to invite everyone to come out.
We'll be there as well.
That's a great time in the city of Violent, another Puerto Rican hub, if you will. Thanks, Juan, for sharing this vital information with our audience. And thank you once again for joining us here on Latino Motion.
Choose quality, value, distinction. Choose Stockton.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.